Live. Hey guys, so hot minute. It's been a little bit. Jen is dealing with tornado warnings, unfortunately, so that's a little bit scary. I'm hoping that we're actually going live the way that we're supposed to. Okay, there we go. It looks like we finally did. It's just that taking a hot minute to update my view count. So, hi guys, welcome back. Unfortunately, Jen's dealing with tornado warnings. She could not make it tonight. People have DM'd me privately and been worried that Jen and I, were on the outs or something. We're not. Jen's just been going through some shit. So, she's been... she's talked on her channel a little bit about some of the health stuff she's been going through, like aches and pains and that kind of thing. So it is entirely nothing to do with Jen and I, and more to do with just life. Jen's taking care of a kid by herself. She's also been dealing with some crap right now. She might have a tornado drop on her house. I'm not going to be pissy with her for not making it to a couple shows when she's going through some shit. You know what I mean? I've even missed things a few times. So.
Yeah, no, actually, I genuinely believe last time I was on, she wasn't able to come. She just hates me instead. I love you, Jen.
She's allergic to marrow. This is the actual problem.
yeah. It's the accent. And the fact I don't exist is also another reason why.
Yeah, well, I mean, we all know that you're just a NASA shill that just comes in here live from Antarctica. That's what you're here. Yeah. You're protecting the ice wall. You're getting all kinds of money for it. I'm waiting for my goddamn checks because I hang out with you. I platform your nonsense, and yet nothing for me.
Do you honestly think that is actually a wall that's white? It's not. It's cold. It's very cold. I'm just I've been acclimatized to the -7 degrees Celsius temperatures. So
and also her snakes are animatronic as well.
Yeah.
It's just very good special effects.
Yeah. Yeah.
So coming back to, we got some super chats already. Holy crap, you crazy people. So we've got Akeda Hakubi, maybe Wind in the World Tree.
Hi, Akeda, how are you?
And the Variants with a super generous $20 donation. Hey, y'all, packing to move to Hawaii to get the vax. Second shot sucked. 'Twas the Pfizer. I've heard the second shot just does everybody. And both the guys were down for 2 days after they got their second shot. But I mean, one of them we knew for a fact had it. The other one never had symptoms. Love y'all. Wish y'all the best. Thank you for giving me something to listen to while I was working. Wish me luck. I'm so tired. Good luck, Variants. Man, you got this, man. You got this. You're going to make it through it.
Yep. Also, MUI Pikachu does point something out, which I have to say, 5,000 subscribers.
Yes, thank you guys so much. You guys are crazy. I hit 5K 2 days ago, and somehow I've now ended up with 5,100. So I'm 100 past that line. I don't know where all y'all are coming from, but welcome to the channel. I actually just made a Pagan 101 playlist, Paganism for Beginners playlist for all of the stuff that isn't necessarily just Hellenism. I'm going to be putting out a community tab post on that pretty soon. I'm also going to be doing a couple of more polls and things to kind of see hey, I got a bunch of new people that just randomly showed up at my doorstep. Who are you guys? Are you pagans? Are you atheists? What are you interested in? Because I did one of those not too long ago, and then I got another 2,000 people. So let's do this, I guess. Welcome. So for today, we're actually continuing kind of a series that Mrna and I have done in live streams, and Mrna's actually going to be doing a edited video that's going to go a little more into the details of the vaccine production process, how these vaccines come to market, and what the progress of vaccine technology looks like. So that's part of the reason why she's here, but also she came on to talk about whether or not they were rushed a couple weeks ago, or a month or two ago, maybe. It's been a while.
It's COVID. We have no idea.
What is time?
Time doesn't exist during COVID.
However, the last stream I did with you was the one where the party in your old bread became a meme.
Yeah.
That was Anon that rioted for that one. That was fun. Yeah. I made a joke about fungal sexes, and it got that video demonetized, apparently. They just decided it was not appropriate for kids. I'm my entire channel is flagged that way. I do not know why fungal reproduction is a problem for advertisers, but apparently advertisers do not like funny science. You can't present science in any sort of entertaining way whatsoever, or the advertisers are fist shaking and frustration.
Sorry for demonetizing your video for you.
That was my own fault. I'm the one who started cracking jokes about like sex parties. So, like, I'm the one who demonetized myself, really. But, like, also, dear Susan, what is the problem of talking about fungal reproduction? Please explain to me, as somebody who isn't really a science communicator but knows enough about science to crack jokes about it, why cracking jokes about science is a problem for your advertisers. Like, do they not have a sense of humor, dear Susan? Like, do they not?
No, they do not. They do not.
Thank you so much, Dale. Jail says, figured I'd give you both some love tonight. Thank you all for all you both do. Going to head off for the rest of my date night, but I'll be lurking. Thank you so much.
Hey, I'm just double checking because I always get my vaccines fixed up.
Also, Banneralla says cacti. For those of you who don't know what that's all about, have fun. My patrons know. They have access to what that's all about. Mero has also seen the video. You guys will find out what the cacti are all about on Thursday. BreadTube meets Pornhub, says Akeda for $5 super chat. I'm not sure. Like, maybe if I've done an interview that's a little closer to that. Capitalist advertisers shaking fist have no unapproved fun. Yeah, that's right, Asina. Heya, Eloy, and Nevada. Hello, peace and love. So, let's get to the topic at hand, because we have shot the shit for approximately 5 minutes, as is typical custom for the bridge. So let's start off a little bit with what people are worried about. So, a little bit of history. The Johnson & Johnson vaccine was the single-dose vaccine. This was the one that a lot of people really wanted because they just wanted to get it all over with at once. It supposedly hit you as hard as the second dose of the Pfizer and Mrna vaccines did. It also was based on the older vaccine technology. It used damaged and disabled viruses. But it doesn't look like it was the viruses themselves per se. It wasn't that they were not weakened enough or anything like that. So let's get into what people seem to think the problem is, even though it's not actually what the problem is. So again, we are talking about what people are saying as opposed to what the case is. People seem to think that this vaccine is one of the mRNA vaccines with the experimental technology, which, as you're about to go about in your video, experimental is not really the best word for what that tech is. It's been experimented on for over 2 decades. But people are worried about the technology. So let's talk a little bit about why. Like, what is it that people seem to think is going on with the Johnson & Johnson vaccine? Because they're wrong, but this is what they think. This is what you're going to hear. We're going to talk about how to fight it.
Yeah. So the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, as you mentioned, is actually like the old school tech. That's the attenuated viruses being. So
like your MMR vaccine's made this way.
Yeah. So basically, what basically happens is that there's a weakened virus or a type of virus that's been genetically modified to produce the proteins on the outside of the virus that causes an immune response. So that's basically what most old school tech vaccines come from. They're either like dead viral pieces or a virus that has had like part of its DNA taken out so it can't reproduce or something like that. So like they're basically like parts of viruses or like weak viruses that your body can easily fight off and respond to as though they were the real thing, but they're not going to do damage to your body. Yeah, so they have several ways of doing it. For example, genetically modifying them. Or you've got the other ones which are like they grow them in formaldehyde, and formaldehyde, to make the virus survive, it has to evolve to become weaker. So it has to fight off the formaldehyde's way of attacking it, so it becomes weaker. You've also got ones that get grown in chicken eggs, such as the flu vaccine, that the immune system from the egg kind of weakens itself, which is why people who have egg allergies can't take the flu vaccine. You also have them being grown in really cold conditions as well. So that also can cause the virus to weaken as well. So because there's always a toss up between how strong something is to survive and its situation it lives in. So for example, I know this is a little bit off topic, but I'll go back into it. There's in antibiotics, we've got antibiotic resistance.
I'm just gonna mention something so you don't lose your track. Melida, I see your question. I see your super chat. I will get back to it. The problem is we're kind of dealing with the history of these vaccines currently. We will get into wider questions from the community in a little bit. So I'm going to put a button on it, but I will remember your question for when we get to the Q&A portion, because we want to get into the history of how vaccines are made, what the tech looks like, and kind of what's going on with this, what people think it is versus the reality of what's going on here, and what we know and what we don't. We can talk about the efficacy of the vaccines and other things in a little bit when we're talking a little more broadly, because I want to try to get as much. Not everybody watches the whole VOD, especially because we're known to shoot the shit off a cliff and down into, imaginary Australia land. So I want to make sure that we stay on topic at the beginning so that folks that are really looking for this information can get it.
Yeah. Long story short, yes, with an asterisk.
So, there's an asterisk, as in there's a lot of we don't know that's going to be as part of the answer. So again, Melida, I see your $10 super chat. Thank you so much. I want to let Nervardia get into kind of how these vaccines are made and how this one was made specifically, because people seem to think that it was one of the mRNA ones, and they're shaking their fists at the sky about tech, and it's not a tech problem.
No. So going back to what I was saying, with a lot of viruses, with a lot of things with biology, it's usually a balance between the two, being able to survive versus being strong, that sort of thing. So this is going off topic, but just to give you an idea of what I'm talking about, is that antibiotic resistance is a big problem that we're having. And what they're doing is they're finding virophages for a particular species of bacteria that is, that could make people sick, and they introduce the virophage into the infection, and the virophage starts attacking the microbe and starts destroying the microbe. So the microbe has to, the microbe species that becomes whatever's really, really strong against the virophage, which is a type of virus. It goes, oh, okay, all right, well, I'm going to have to try and fight off this virophage, or they have natural selection pressures to make the virophage more, that become more resistant to the virophage. But because they're become more resistant to the virophage, they actually weaken their defenses against the antibiotic. So it's more like a 1-2 punch. And it's the same sort of thing with the viruses. If you put them in a situation where they can survive, but they don't thrive, they have to evolve or be a way to be stronger to be able to survive in that particular situation. But by surviving,
and keep in mind when we're talking about evolution and natural selection here, these are not active processes. This is random chance that happens to be effective. Like if you get a virus, because we covered this a little bit in one of our previous episodes, but again, we've got a lot of newbies here that had not hung out in my chats before. So hi guys, again, welcome newbies. But for those of you who haven't heard this sort of discussion before, when we're talking about natural selection pressure, what we're talking about here is you've got this little virus, it injects itself into a cell, and I'm pulling this number out of my whole asshole, but let's say it makes 1 million more of itself. That's actually an understatement. They make a lot more than that. They make so much that they cause the cells to explode. But some of them do, some don't. Some causes the cell to slowly blob away. There's two different types. There's the explode or implode, basically.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, not many people know that. Everyone thinks that just viruses always lyse the cell, but some of the I think HIV does this, where the virions just kind of blob out of the cell and take a little bit of the cell wall to come with it, so it's enveloped within a
which is part of what protects them from the other macrophages.
Yeah. Sorry for interrupting with you. I just thought I'd slip that useless tidbit in. Continue. Sorry, Ali.
But yeah, like as far as that goes, like when you're talking about natural selection, what you're talking about is, in general, with evolution, natural selection, etc., you're talking about an individual being surviving and passing on its DNA, or in this case, RNA, because that's what viruses make. The cells are not particularly good at making viruses. That's not what they're for. So you're going to end up with a lot of oopsies. Those oopsies are mutations, as you guys know. But when you're talking about natural selection, what you're talking about is of those million cells, even if there's a 0.005% chance, 5 of those cells, 5 of those viral cells are going to be fucked up. Well, if you're talking about the rest of them are going to go out and make a million more, 5 of those are going to be fucked up. Eventually, you're going to get a mutation that makes the virus better at what it's doing. And you're going to get a lot of them that don't. So when you're talking about natural selection, all you're talking about is whether or not those viral babies, if you want to call them that, like those virus, like children, if you want to call them that, for lack of a better way to put it, do they go off and infect a cell? Daughters.
I think they're known as daughters. I know that you've got daughter cells, so maybe it's the same for virology. I'm not entirely sure.
Well, we'll say viral spawn. If those spawn, they're going to go infect another cell, make another million more. There's 5 more spawn that are going to be messed up. Eventually, just due to sheer numbers, you're going to get a virus that's a little better at either infecting or reproducing or sometimes killing the host, which is not so good, or reproducing faster, which again kills the host faster, but that can also make it so that they don't spread as well. So you're going to get a lot of little like fuck ups in the DNA that are eventually going to cause the virus to behave differently. And if one of those viruses that behaves differently gets to make a lot more spawn than others, that's when you get additional strains that get more and more and more differentiated from that original. So when we're talking about natural selection, this isn't an active choice by the virus by any means, any more than it's an active choice whether or not if you've got brown eyes and you go bone somebody with blue eyes and a blue-eyed child comes out, you didn't pick those blue eyes, you just happen to have the gene. It's the same thing. Like, you're not actively selecting for any of the traits that your child gets. You just happen to be with somebody who happened to have the DNA to mix with yours in their, in the cells that, mixed to do that. So your spawn came out differently. Your child is different.
That's basically
and again,
evolution.
Your child has just as much of a chance to have a small mutation somewhere. All of your eggs or sperm or whatever you happen to have, if you happen to be somebody who can reproduce, because some people can't, I can't. As far as we know, I'm not fertile. But for those of us who are, you have mutations in your cells too. Your cell, those cells are slightly different than you. That's not all your DNA in there. There are screw ups that happen there too. And that's how you can get different traits across different people across the entire world. That's how what we think of as racial traits eventually came to be. They're not racial traits, they're just adaptations that happen to take in certain areas because they were helpful in some way.
Yeah. So that's this word's escaping me now. Oh crap. That's a phenotypic expression.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that we're all of the one species, but the phenotypic expression is different because of protein production and blah, blah, blah. Very fascinating subject.
And when I was talking about racial traits, I was more talking about things like eye shape, facial shape, that kind of thing. Yeah. Things that people typically think of. I wasn't even talking about melanin production because there seems to be a link between melanin production and just latitude in general. It's been shown that some people that were lighter skin tone, if they live in an area for long enough, they'll eventually get children that are more and more, whether they intermarried within a darker skin tribe or not. That seems to be a slightly epigenetic thing, and there's research on that's been looked into. But other traits that you think of as being quote unquote ethnic, and again, I'm not saying that race is real. Race is a political construct. What I'm saying is these expressions, as Nervardia referred to them, they are things that may have been advantageous in a particular area, even though we're all still the same Homo sapiens. There are some things that you might see more commonly in certain areas because they were useful. In terms of just physical shapes of things and differentiating depending on what was genetically available during a time where humans weren't wandering all over the planet quite as much as we are now.
Yeah. So if you wanted to give a good example of that is people who've lived for thousands and thousands of years up in the higher lands, up Sherpa, people who live really high up.
Inuits have an adaptation that changes the way that they process certain proteins.
Yeah. And but with the people who live really high up in the mountains, they actually have a genetic mutation that changes their hemoglobin. If I'm correct on that one, I think I'm correct on that one because if they come down lower, they don't like it. They don't like going down where the air is thicker. not because they're not used to it, for one, and two, like they're adapted to being so high up in the mountains. And, you know, sickle cell anemia is another one. Sickle cell anemia is found in a lot of African people with African ancestry, because sickle cell anemia, if it is heterozygous, it actually confers a little bit of protection against malaria. So that's another one. There's lots of examples. Like you've got the CCR5.
There's actually one that's like one of the less controversial ones to talk about, and that is if you are European from Europe, you have a very good chance of having a gene adaptation that makes you extremely resistant or immune to the plague. Because most of the people that survived, you know, most of the people that are in Europe now that were not immigrants to Europe, so like people whose families were there, those Europeans, a lot of them, like their ancestors just happened to have that mutation. And given that the plague wiped out 3/4 of Europe's population or thereabouts, maybe more, it depends on like what estimate you're looking at from which historian, the people who survived were very, very likely to have this evolutionary adaptation. So it's not some sort of European superiority. If anything, it was just random chance that these people just so happened to have survived the plague because of this genetic adaptation. So their progeny had it. That's natural selection. That's one of those things. That's natural selection working on humans.
That's the CCR5 delta 32 gene mutation. I talk about that. I talked about the plague in one of my videos.
So let's
go.
Yeah, let's. So actually I can link to that video if you guys are curious. Toward the end of the stream, I will be happy to link to that video because I helped edit that script and it was a lot of fun to work on that one.
Yeah, you might. I put a link to the script in the description because I was like, this is a lot of sciences. So if you need to, might want to read along with it.
But yeah, for the record, Mrna and I worked on her scripts together, a lot of them. And that one was fun. I actually learned a few things from that one. And I actually contributed a little bit to it too, because I think that part of the reason you talked about the plague was because you had just done the video on hey, stop naming diseases after places and people. Like, it's not cool.
Yeah, it was a little bit to do with that. It was just more of the, it was one of the things where it was just, there was like, oh my God, they found the plague in China. And I'm like, dude, they find the plague everywhere, every single year. Just stop.
It's everywhere all the time. All right, so let's get back a little bit. So the reason we talked about natural selection, the reason we were talking about weakened viruses and stuff was because what do people think the problem with the Johnson & Johnson vaccine is, Nervardia? Because you've been working on this video, so you went and dug into what people have been saying, and I even helped you find some of that stuff.
One of the problems they have with the Johnson & Johnson vaccine is that they think it is an mRNA vaccine, but it is not, everybody. The Johnson & Johnson vaccine is this is hard to say. The Johnson & Johnson vaccine is an adenovirus that's been changed to produce the spike protein for COVID-19. So it's old tech. It's basically the stuff that we've been using for years. And yeah, so it's a harmless adenovirus. The Johnson & Johnson and AstraZeneca uses that particular one. I can't remember. One is a chimpanzee, if I remember correctly, adenovirus, and the other one is a harmless human adenovirus. I don't know which one's which. So they've been, and all they want to do is produce those spike proteins that is the way the COVID-19 virus gets into our cells, which is through the ACE2 receptor.
So basically they make these things, but they don't know how to use them. So they just kind of make them and then sit there.
Basically, it's the same way as any other virus based vaccine. So basically you just put it in there and then you just let your immune system do its thing. It's generally a harmless virus where they put the spike protein on the outside of it.
So, let's talk a little bit about what the worry about the Johnson & Johnson vaccine is. I've got an article here from NPR because they are generally a pretty good source on most things. I tend to get irritated with some of their nutrition coverage, but I feel that way about just about all of the press, just ever, because
as a rule.
Oh my God! Don't be started. Nervardi has heard so many nutrition rants. But I've got this link here that I just put in the live chat from NPR. And it's talking about what's going on with the blood clots. So approximately it says that it's primarily women between the ages of 18 and 48. So we are talking about, as far as I know, AFAB people. It has not been said whether any of these women were trans. The preliminary data suggests that they were probably cis. So AFAB people. But we have no idea if, like, say, being MTF or FTM, like, if that affects anything, because we don't necessarily know what's causing these immune responses.
I will interject as well. These are so rare that the fact that it hasn't hit anybody who's trans is not all that surprising.
It's like, what, 8 people out of 7 million?
Something like that.
Yeah. So this is a subgroup that admittedly was underrepresented in vaccine trials, because typically it's a lot easier to find men for vaccine trials, just in general. AMAB folks who identify as men, cis men, are significantly easier to find unless you're specifically looking for other groups.
And also that can call, they often make women they knock out a lot of women as well, because they're worried about people getting pregnant. So I wanted to do be a part of a malaria vaccine trial, and they were like, just for the safety phase 2. And they were like, if you're female, we can't, because we're worried, you could get pregnant. I'm just like, but if I got pregnant, that nothing would happen.
Conversely, they'll also knock you out for being on birth control. Because it's like, well, that could also increase your risk for like, basically, if you were born with XX chromosomes and identify with them, there's a very good chance that you'll still be told no. And
that'd be the phase 2 trials generally for the safety reasons. I think in the phase 3, you're more likely to.
They don't think you'll get pregnant from the vaccine. They think you'll get pregnant while you are testing the vaccine, and that will change their results somehow. Like, if you start throwing up because you got pregnant, then you might attribute that to the vaccine. That kind of stuff.
Or it could affect the fetus as well.
Yeah, so, vaccine trials.
Yeah, like, you don't really, like, even though you've got the placenta barrier, you can still get vaccine. You can still get some diseases passing through that, and they don't want to risk that. Which, there's often things like that. There is actually a really good reason for it, but it is very, very frustrating.
Well, I mean, it's part of the reason why, for example, like with antidepressants, they found out recently that women were getting overdosed with them because of the way that certain medications respond to estrogen, and like the way that certain, and this applies to trans women as well. Like, in addition to AFAB folks, which is what a lot of the articles are about, but they found that because it's an estrogen thing specifically, that it also applies to people that are transitioning. Like, that is a thing. And I'm not separating trans women and women. I'm talking about, when you're talking about like medications and things, there can be a distinction between like some AFAB folks and like trans folks that have transitioned, because there are some things that trans folks who have transitioned like still medically are different from like certain AFAB folks. Some AFAB folks also have like conditions and things that make their bodies act more like AMAB folks. It's really difficult when you're talking about sex, but when I'm talking about here, estrogen reacted with the medication in such a way that it caused the body to rid itself of it more slowly. And so they found that trans women and AFAB women, like cis women, were more likely to be accidentally overdosed on these medications because their body wasn't clearing them out the way that the men that, like cis men that primarily were the bulk of the trials, the way that they ended up
Yeah, there's a lot of really nasty bias against women in in scientific studies, and it's starting to get better. There's movements within the scientific now. They're starting going, oh shit, this actually happens. They're starting to now slowly kind of understanding. All right, let's work with women, and it's slow but it's getting there. There's more awareness coming. It's glacial. We might not be having that problem in the next 50 years, but who knows? But
I'm sorry for my awkward stammering through things, but I'm not trying to be transphobic when I'm talking about like sex stuff. Unfortunately, that's one of the few reasons why, like, one of the only few people that need to know if somebody is trans is your doctor, because there are some things that we do know affect trans people differently, even than like cis people of the sex that they may have been born as. Like intersex people also have different health concerns than, like folks that were developed more, like typically. So we're like, this stuff is very emerging, and it's hard to talk about without accidentally sounding transphobic, when I'm not in any way implying that like trans women aren't women. I'm just saying that there are some things that affect trans women differently because of the way that like genetics and, like hormones and all that interact differently in bodies. Like, especially post-transition trans women tend to be significantly closer to cis women in terms of how their bodies interact with things than like during the transition or pre-transition. Like, that's just a thing.
Yeah. And this is an area of study that needs to be looked at. That's for sure.
You'd be surprised. There have been some accusations of that recently. I want to make sure that I'm being extraordinarily clear because I'm live and there's a lot of new people on the channel. So you might not know my history of trans activism, and you might not know that I myself am gender fluid. I'm trans. So,
and I am very much an ally. So I will let you know that I am also not trans, because I'm not trans, but transphobic. And if I was transphobic, Ali would not have me on her channel.
No, I would not. I will not have somebody I know as a transphobe on my channel, ever. Like, I can swear that to you. I will not have a true scum that I know is a true scum, and I will not knowingly have a transphobe on my channel. There's a reason why I'm very picky about who comes on here. So, let's come back to the blood clots. So, it says that there are too few cases at this point to determine what specific risk factors might predispose someone to developing these clots. So, we don't really know because there are so few cases, but there were enough of them, and they all seem to fit the same demographic that the FDA was a little concerned. Do you want to talk a little bit about some of the preliminary theories that they're putting out there? I guess hypotheses, because these are not theories. Theory and science mean something different, guys. But some of the preliminary hypotheses on why this might be. Some of it seems to have to do with the spike protein and the idea of a cytokine storm. So let's kind of talk a little bit about that.
Well, also, they're talking about platelet levels. If you've got low platelet levels for some reason, that can cause a problem with the clotting. So basically, it's a cerebral venous thrombosis. And I think I'm missing another word in there. So
is it cerebral intravenous?
Something like that. CTV. I have it. Hang on, let's see if I can find it in my script.
Venous sinus thrombosis, CVST.
There we go.
Cerebral venous sinus thrombosis.
Yeah. So basically, it's basically in the front of your brain, and there's lots of delicate blood vessels and stuff in the brain. So if you have an injury or if you have like an infection or something like that, you can get very, 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 you could get something like this. I had dental surgery done on my front tooth and my whole face swelled up. And anyway, my mum took me back to the dentist afterwards, and when it died out, just for the checkup. And she told the dentist that my face swelled up, and he was just like, shit, like I could have died from one of these, because there's lots of delicate blood vessels in the back of this, in the front of your face, that could cause something like this.
Quick thing. I'm about to pull a trigger warning for anybody who's watching this in the chat. Sten, are you trolling? Because if you're not, you and I are about to have some fucking words.
Oh, go for it.
Like, I want to get are you trolling? Like, are you just talking out your ass to be a Poe, or do you actually believe that? Because if you do, I've got a science communicator on at the moment. We can tell you all about how that's some bullshit. So, do you want to get into this fight with us? Like, or are you being a Poe? Because Poe's law states that I have no fucking clue. I'm gonna let's go back. The Johnson & Johnson vaccine, we don't know if it's perfectly safe. These people who seem to have both of these conditions, thrombocytopenia is the condition you were talking about with the low platelet counts. Like, for the record, by the way, I completely disagree with what Sten just said. Please fucking get vaccinated. I'm supposed to go in to get the vaccine tomorrow. I might get rescheduled. They said that they're low on vaccines. I'm going to get a call in the morning, but I'm supposed to be getting my first shot tomorrow. It's going to be hell. I've had COVID before. I'm probably going to be sick off my ass for 2 days and cranky as fuck, and the 5K Q&A is probably going to be next week. But I'm going to do it anyway. To be a good example, because you know what? I'm a public fucking figure. I'm going to go get a shot in my arm just the same as most of my friends have, like, that are YouTubers, in solidarity with everybody else. B, I really don't want to get it again. I don't want to die. I don't want to freaking die. I damn near did the first time. I don't want to die. If there's a chance that this vaccine is going to prolong my immunity, because we don't know if I actually have it or not, fuck it. I am willing to be sick twice for 2 or 3 days so that I don't end up with a blood clot again, so that I don't get to watch my husband damn near die again from a fever over 104 that lasted for a week, and I don't have to have another conversation with my mother-in-law about who's going to have to make medical decisions if he doesn't wake up. Okay? You don't want to go through that shit. Don't be dumb.
Variance the Eclectic says, what's Poe's law?
Poe's law is that basically you can't tell the difference between a troll and somebody who genuinely believes extremist theories. So basically, you know, if somebody comes on spouting extremely ignorant nonsense that's very conspiracy theory, it's impossible for me to tell the difference between them and somebody who actually believes it.
Yeah. So, yeah. Oh, Akita.
Oh, Akita, $5 super chat says we don't want you to die either. Thank you so much, Akita. But just saying, I'm going to go in and get the vaccine. Leota Faulkner, actually, the thing is, it was only one specific vaccine that seems to carry that risk in a very specific circumstance, and that's what this stream is about.
Yeah. So
because the other 2 vaccines do not seem to carry this clot risk, comparatively, in part because you're getting them in 2 doses. Like the current, one of the current hypotheses, we're about to get into that. So you can still get the vaccine, as far as we know, because the other vaccine types, the Johnson & Johnson vaccine is completely recalled right now. You cannot get it in the US. If you've already gotten it and you're a month later and you haven't gotten clots, guess what? You're out of the danger zone. It seems to only be within 2 weeks.
And it also seems to be like it's also safe for people who haven't got it before. So if you have the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, you don't get the CVST, you also are safe to get it again. So because it only seems to be these people, if you should be safe.
So here we go. Daniel Dustboot says, vaccinate. Some of us don't have as good an immune system and aren't safe when we take our vaccines like we are supposed to. So we need you to get vaccines as well. Thank you if you get your vaccine. That herd immunity is essential. Folks who cannot get the MMR vaccine because of rare allergies to the components in it or something like that rely on the rest of us to vaccinate ourselves and our health spawn in order to not die. Herd immunity is essential. I don't give a damn about your fucking rights. Go to the goddamn doctor, take your shot, be sick for a couple of days, and save your goddamn grandma. Because you don't know who you just walked by in a store or who's about to go deliver something to somebody like from that store. You don't know who the hell you passed by that you might like kill potentially because you decided you didn't feel like doing it. Get your fucking vaccine. Just do it. I don't even give a shit if this gets me demonetized. I've already lost monetization on at least 2 of my COVID streams for profanity because fuck that shit. I refuse to sit here and let people just be anti-vax in my chat. I damn near died because we didn't have a vaccine when it passed through my state. My husband also almost died. We almost killed my diabetic, high-risk, like freaking liver-failing border between the 2 of us because my husband brought it home. Because we didn't have that option. If you do and you refuse because, you know, like you think it's wrong or you think that meditating and good diet's going to save you from COVID, guess what? I'm a vegetarian. I work out every goddamn day. Didn't save me.
Yeah.
I also meditate daily.
I also we always concentrate on the morbidity. What about the mortality? No, sorry, we concentrate on the mortality, but what about the morbidity? So the difference between mortality is if you die, and morbidity is if you get sick. And
100% of, like, what is it, like 70% of people who get the virus get sick, but 100% seem to have some kind of long-term complications.
Mhm.
Even if you don't get symptoms, you might just not know what symptoms you got, because people who are asymptomatic have gotten blood clots later from the virus, not the vaccine.
Yeah. So you've got something called DALYs, DALYS, and oh my God, I'm going back about 2 years. Disability. I can't, hang on. I'll have to look this up. Basically, what it is, it's a way of determining how long you're sick for and how much it shortens your life by, because every disease shortens your life that you get. Even the common cold shortens your life a little bit, but basically it's just talking about how sick, like how much it knocks you out. And this disability, whatever the rest of the word acronym stands for, is things can go into years and years and years. It's looking like COVID-19 can make people sick for the rest of their lives.
Steve and I both have damaged lung capacity. We both have scarring in our lungs. I lost a bunch of hair that has not come back.
Yeah.
I remember stressing to you about that.
Yeah.
It fell out in clumps, and we were told it was going to come back. It hasn't.
You've also got erectile dysfunction, isn't another one. That's another one. There's people losing limbs.
David Lester says Johnson & Johnson vaccine is back in use as of April 24th with a link.
No, thank you, David Lester. Appreciate that. It's just, there's so much. And one of the things that's really bothering me is everyone's concentrating on these people have died from the COVID vaccine. Yes, unfortunately, this is something that not all the people who
got the blood clots even died.
Yeah, I think it's only one person or two people.
Yeah, out of 8 people, I'm going to have to go Google that. I'm not going to repeat that without knowing who it is. Let's see. How severe were the cases reported so far? Here in the article that I pulled up. 6 reported cases as of the article on the 14th. I think there's been 2 more since, because I read somewhere that it was 8, but I might be wrong. 1 was fatal, and 1 patient is in critical condition. The other 4 were fine. So we have 6 people. 1 died. 1 is receiving intensive care. The other 4 recovered. So these blood clots were not even fatal for everybody.
Yeah.
And they, again, were a specific condition that all of these people had. They all share this. These were all AFAB people who had a specific low platelet count condition specifically.
And one of the things that really pisses me off, and I'm so close to doing a video on it, is the fact that our media has been. Oh, let me rant. Okay,
Carpathia says she loves science streams. Now, I've done my service. I have done my service for the people who are super chatting. Go ahead and rant, Nervardia. You've got the floor.
All right, I've got the floor. Okay. The media in my country, it's probably the same as yours, is that every single time that somebody who has had the vaccines almost immediately after dying or something going wrong have gone, could it be the vaccine? For example, there was a lady who had the vaccine. She was an elderly lady in an aged care facility, and she died 3 hours after receiving the vaccine. This happens all the time. People who get a vaccine die, and the reason why they die is because, statistically speaking, that's going to happen. I'm not saying that it wasn't a tragedy or a sad thing for the family, but what's happened is that the media goes, this person died 3 hours after the vaccine, blah blah blah, does a 2-minute story on how this person died 3 hours after receiving the vaccine, and just right at the end they go, oh, but they don't think it was caused by the vaccine. What are people going to take away from that message? That message says elderly woman dies 3 hours after vaccine, therefore the vaccine causes her death. No, that's not what happened. She died because she died. And it's really bad, because what is that going to do? It's going to make people not want to get the vaccine, because they're like, oh, what if I die? Correlation does not equal causation, everyone. You got to remember this. You could argue, oh, I got the vaccine and then I got hit by a car.
Statistically, you're more likely to get struck by lightning and survive than you are to get blood clots, because you're not very likely to be AFAB and have that condition and get the Johnson & Johnson single dose vaccine. Like, if you are any one of those conditions is not met, then currently, as far as we know, you're most likely not at risk for those sorts of things. Alan gave a $10 super chat during your rant that I let you finish. My wife and I got the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, and other than being a little tired, it was fine. I know it was scary to see the small sample of people getting blood clots. I hope our stories put people at ease. Yeah, and to be honest, like, anecdotes like that can be more powerful. That's part of the reason why, is we hear, oh my God, somebody died. Even though there's 7 million of those doses, like, that number doesn't hit quite as much as, oh my God, somebody died, because it's an individual, not a group. So if you have had the Johnson & Johnson vaccine and came out fine, I urge you to go to Twitter, talk about it, say hashtag I had J&J vaccine and am fine. Like, go out there, tell your fucking stories. Like, tell people that you came out okay. Because if it is going to be put back into use and some people want that convenience, if it's safe as far as we know, then again, the majority of people who get COVID-19 are going to get some form of long-term complication. Even if you don't realize that that's what happened, you can get organ damage, you can get immune system damage, you can get like lung damage, especially. You're like, you know, one person, Metalhawk, earlier said that one of their friends lost their sense of taste permanently. I have lung damage. I have muscle loss. I have hair loss. My body is fucked up because of what happened. My husband has a permanent cough that he didn't have before because his lungs got so screwed up.
Yeah.
If you get that virus, you are going to have permanent damage done to your body. No way around it.
And another thing that I was just going back to my rant is that one of the things is one of the headlines, one of the first thing that came up, like when I was watching watching the news, was first COVID death in Australia, but it was from the vaccine. And it's like, it's just one person, and yet you are okay at just like shitting all over our premiers who are like stopping, going, we have to shut the place down, we don't want people to die, and the media was shitting all over them. People were dying from COVID-19, and they're like, oh, you know, whatever, one person dies, oh my God, it is the worst thing ever. And what's the saying? What is it saying? A single death is a tragedy. 3 deaths is a statistic,
okay, here's one.
Or something like that.
All right, so
sorry, but
I found the statistics. So here is one of this is from 2020, July 22nd, 2020, but it's one of the few studies I could find. 16% of COVID-19 patients, specifically in the New York City health system, developed blood clots. However, of ICU patients, so these are the people who got like intensive care, you know, whether or not you ended up, like my husband would count as an ICU patient, whether or not you ended up intubated, you can still end up in the intensive care unit for COVID for things like you can't bring your fever down, which is what happened with him. 29.4% got a blood clot. Death or discharge to hospice rates were higher among those with blood clots, 43.2% compared to those without them. So you have between potentially a 16 to 30% chance of developing a blood clot if you get the virus versus less than a 1 in a million potentially if you get the vaccine. Which are you more scared of? Be completely honest with yourself. Which are you more scared of? Because again, there have been statistics that have also shown that there is a much higher likelihood of developing blood clots even if you catch it and are asymptomatic. So you might not ever have known you had the virus and you still can get these complications.
Yeah. Asina goes, sorry that Murdoch is there, Navadia. And I'm like, yeah, we produced him. I apologize to the rest of the world. But he is now an American citizen, so you can keep him. But I know it's off topic, but in my opinion, Murdoch is probably the most powerful and most dangerous person on this planet. The Murdoch media empire is one of the most dangerous things on this planet, in my opinion, because of the stuff that he says and the stuff that he pushes, and the stuff that he got Trump elected, he got Brexit, he got Scott Morrison elected. He's just putting his fingers in all of the pies for all of the right-wing conspiracy theories. I honestly think he is a net negative to the world, and people have been warning about him for decades. He needs to be stopped because I think he is an evil person. That's my personal opinion. 666, the anime cat, 666. But Rupert Murdoch, he's the one who runs the Murdoch media empire. So like Fox News, Sky News, all of those. Yeah, evil person. Anyway, sorry, off topic, but and he's one of the reasons why people are not taking their vaccines. He's one of the reasons why people are not socially distancing or masking up. He's the reason why so much bad is happening. He has literal blood on his hands because of the stuff that he pushed in his media. Anyway, that's... Sorry, Ali.
So let's come back a little bit because there was a question earlier about the Mrna vaccine, I believe. Let's see, the mRNA vaccines, are they safe for pregnant people? Like, has there been any sort of link to birth defects? The answer, from what I can tell from the few studies that I've been able to pull up, is most likely no. They are not unsafe for pregnant people. There is a paper that I just pulled, which I'm going to link in the live chat. This is from the New England Journal of Medicine. So one of that, not the highest necessarily, but one of the, peer-reviewed journals that is a decent source. It's got a fairly high, it's got a fairly high rating in terms of how often it gets cited.
Impact.
So from December 14th to February 28th, 2021, we used data from the VSafe After Vaccination Health Checker Surveillance System, the VSafe Pregnancy Registry, and the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System, VAERS, which I'm going to remind the chat, for all of you anti-vaxxers that are lurking in my chat being, just seething and foaming at the mouth, VAERS does not mean that somebody actually suffered an injury from a vaccine. And no, vaccines do not cause autism. They just don't. Stop trying. That was discredited from a guy who was trying to market a more spaced out vaccine schedule. He had a financial stake in that.
Yeah, that's another video I'm thinking about doing, is the reason why Andrew Wakefield has been completely demolished, because that needs to be talked about. He had anyway, I don't want to go into that right now, but it is definitely a video I've been thinking about doing, because we need to remind people why he was taken out, because he was one of the reasons why the anti-vax movement's so big. So again, he's got blood on his hands too.
So this particular trial, 35,691 VSafe participants 16 to 54 years of age identified as pregnant. Injection site pain was reported more frequently among pregnant persons than among non-pregnant women. So yeah, your arm's going to hurt a little more maybe. Whereas headache, myalgia, chills, and fever were actually reported less frequently. So you're less likely to have bad side effects if you are pregnant, at least according to this study, potentially. It says among the 3958 participants enrolled in the VSafe pregnancy registry, 827 had a completed pregnancy, of which 115 resulted in a pregnancy loss and 712 resulted in a live birth, mostly among participants with vaccination in the third trimester. Adverse neonatal outcomes in prelim birth and small size for gestational age. No neonatal deaths were reported, although not directly comparable. Calculated proportions of adverse pregnancy and neonatal outcomes in persons vaccinated against COVID-19 who had completed pregnancy were similar to incidences reported in studies involving pregnant women that were conducted before the COVID-19 pandemic. In other words, the vaccine appears to have no statistical significance in this. So these statistics are roughly equivalent to the general population.
Yeah. And
so
again, we have to
preliminary findings
remember.
did not show any obvious safety signals among pregnant persons who received the mRNA COVID-19 vaccines. A more longitudinal follow-up, including follow-ups of large numbers of women vaccinated earlier in pregnancy, is necessary to inform maternal pregnancy and infant outcomes. Basically, they're acknowledging that this particular study skewed toward the third trimester. We need more data on earlier, but so far we see absolutely nothing, which is, again, pretty comparable to most other vaccines, because there's very little evidence to show that the majority of vaccines can cause any kind of damage to children whatsoever, even if you get vaccinated while you're pregnant.
Yeah. You also have to remember, I mentioned this earlier, is the placental barrier. So within you've got parts of your body that has membranes that separate parts of your body. So you've got the blood-brain barrier, which surrounds the brain. In fact, it's been there for so long, your brain has its own immune system. And you've also got the placental barrier, where it only allows certain things to get through. So you can have malaria, and there's different types of malaria. But if you're a pregnant woman and you have malaria, there's a chance that it could pass through the placental barrier, but sometimes it can't. Here's a good example is a person called Rennie Gibbs. Rennie Gibbs was arrested and sent to prison for fetal endangerment because she had a miscarriage while she was a cocaine addict, even though experts said that there was no cocaine in the child's body because the placental barrier didn't let the cocaine through into the baby. She miscarried because the baby had its umbilical cord wrapped around its neck, which can cause a miscarriage. So she was basically sent to jail for having a miscarriage. So that's a good example. The thing is, you can easily get sick while pregnant and not have that cause an issue with the child, unless of course you become really, really sick, like a very high fever, and you're early on in the pregnancy. When I was growing up, my next door neighbor had a daughter who had a learning disability because her mother got a really bad case of the flu when she was very early on in her pregnancy.
Oh my God, I'm sorry. I'm not laughing at what you said. Carp just made me laugh my ass off in the chat. I'm so sorry. I was trying to hold that back. But it's, references to recent content on the channel, guys. That I'm just going to put that up there to make everybody laugh while you continue to tell your story. This is not disrespecting anything that you're about to talk about. I'm just
fair enough.
A very inappropriate humor. I'm sorry.
So what I was saying is that with a lot of vaccines, you don't actually have to worry about that. With thimerosal doesn't pass through the blood-brain barrier in adults, let alone children. So getting the Mrna vaccine that doesn't even have thimerosal because it was removed
because of anti-vax hysteria.
Because of that, you're not going to get autism because it doesn't cross the blood-brain barrier. Number one, and number two,
autism is genetic as far as we know. Currently, the main theory, we don't absolutely know what causes it, but the main theory on autism is that it's hereditary, just like ADHD. And it's not one gene, it's a line of genes that all can be affected, which is why a lot of people on the spectrum also happen to have ADHD. It's the same genetic segment that is often but also, I'm just gonna, for those in the back who have not heard me say this before, autism is not a death sentence. It's not. A good chunk of my close friends have autism and they live perfectly productive and happy lives. It makes things a little harder because the society is not very understanding. But is autism a death sentence? No, it's not. In fact, folks on the spectrum actually, I enjoy talking with folks on the spectrum a great deal because A, they talk more like folks with ADHD than neurotypical people do. That's just a thing. I have better conversations with my friends who have ADHD and my friends who are on the spectrum than because they can keep up with the crazy way my brain likes to spasm. Hence why, there's such entertaining conversations when we have neurodivergent people on the show, right? Jen and I would not have the rapport we do if we were not both neurodivergent. But also, neurodivergence in general is a positive thing. There are ways in which folks on the spectrum often can think that can bring ideas into the world that would otherwise not exist. Like, there is a benefit to that. And if you learn how to, like, if you're patient with people, if you're, like, neurotypical and you're patient with people and you get to know them, folks on the spectrum are not a boogeyman. And it can be hard being a parent of somebody who's on the spectrum, but it's also hard on them being rejected by society. And it's going to be easier for you to educate yourself and to be a better parent and to be accepting than it will be to try to force them to be something that they're not. Like, you should not be more scared of your kid potentially having a, difference in the way that their brain operates that is ultimately benign in terms of, like, health outcomes and other things than you are of your kid potentially being forever maimed or dead by a disease that is entirely preventable.
Yep, absolutely. 100%. I will actually say I did do a video on thimerosal ages ago, talking about the levels needed to kill a person, and it's like 0.701, like or something. I can't, like, you had to, for the vaccine, the level of thimerosal in a vaccine to kill a young child, you'd need to inject them 37 times or something like that. So the vaccine itself would kill you before the thimerosal. So yeah,
you're more likely to be allergic to the damn thing than thimerosal is to kill you.
Yeah.
But also, Metalhawk very well stated, neurodivergent people are just as valuable as neurotypical people. And to be honest, again, we think differently. I'm not on the spectrum, but I am neurodivergent. I have a genetic condition that makes me think differently. I think more like somebody on the spectrum than I do somebody who's neurotypical. Like, that's just a fact. If you have severe ADHD, I get along better. Most of my closest friends are neurodivergent. And I'm going to say, for those in the back that didn't hear me the first fucking time, yeah, if you're neurotypical and your kid's neurodivergent, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to be a parent. I'm going to completely freaking acknowledge that, right? Like, there are going to be challenges there. I know that I challenged my mom in ways that, like, my neurotypical sister did not. Does that necessarily make me the devil hellspawn? Does that mean that she shouldn't have gotten me vaccinated? I could have died from smallpox instead of just being a handful. Would you rather watch that precious baby of yours die in your freaking arms from an entirely preventable disease just because you decided to take them to a freaking smallpox party? No, don't be dumb. Please, don't be so scared of a genetic disorder that is entirely, like, that allows somebody to entirely, like, live an entirely full and functional life than you are of your kid dying. Like, that is cruel and ableist and disgusting, and it's not fucking okay.
But also, to be fair, you are Satan's hellspawn, but not because you're neurodivergent.
June 6th at 6 a.m, I am absolutely becoming Antichrist. And me and everybody else who was born at that time.
All right. Can I have a chat about how the mRNA vaccine actually works and how it differs to the adenovirus vaccines?
Yeah, let's talk about that, and then we can get to, poor Melida's been waiting this entire time to hear the answer to their question as well, so we can get to that also, because the answer still is we don't really know. There are some strains that might be resistant to the vaccine because of changes that are happening in the spike protein, but we don't have confirmation on that yet.
Yeah. So basically, I talked a little bit, the adenovirus vaccines are basically, they've been modified to produce the spike protein that is known, that is called, produced by COVID-19. And then basically you have an immune response. The mRNA vaccine is a little bit different. So basically they get the RNA that, so mRNA is basically
messenger RNA is what it stands for.
It's your messenger RNA. So basically what it does is it goes into the cell and it tells the ribosome, which is like this structure, to produce a protein that going by the RNA sequence. So it's basically, how would I explain it? It'd be basic. Yeah, it's a blueprint. It's a
blueprint and the lever that you pull to get things to produce the blueprint.
Yeah. Another way you could probably say it's like the cord, the information travels down the cord and then produces a picture. The mRNA is the core, is the information that's going into the picture that's being produced on your screen. I think it's probably another way you can think about it. So basically,
old computers actually used to have these like long strips of paper with punches that were taken out of it that were fed into the machine. It's kind of like that.
Yeah, it's like that. It's yeah, and so basically, that the ribosome, which is this structure, produces the protein, and basically what happens with viruses, they go in, they attack, they basically insert their mRNA into the ribosome and tells the ribosome, make lots of these proteins, and the ribosome will do it, and then it will just continue making more of it until the cell itself dies, or and then all of a sudden the virus is being released into the rest of your system.
Holy, one real quick. $20 super chat from Coyote. Thank you so much. That was incredibly generous. So glad to have an intelligent discussion on all this. Get the damn vax. Also, I haven't yeeted the money at the stream yet, so yeet. Well, thank you for yeeting the money, and don't forget to yeet your offerings after they are done. Wind in the World Tree reference. So continue your discussion on messenger RNA. That was a really generous super chat. Thank you so much, Coyote. Or Coyote.
You're the best.
Coyote. I forgot. That's how it's pronounced. Coyote.
So what happened? So basically, what happens with the mRNA vaccine is what they've done is they've enveloped the mRNA in a microlipid, a nanolipid. So basically, rather than getting injected straight into your immune system, and your immune system going, aha, that's something that's foreign and I have to attack it. It needs to be delivered into the cell to produce the mRNA, to produce the RNA spike protein. So they've just basically put the mRNA into a nanolipid, and when it gets injected, it gets absorbed into the cells like any other a lipid or whatever. Like cells need to have things going in and out for it to function. They're not like a closed-in thing they need to bring water in or get rid of water for osmotic pressure and all that sort of stuff. So what happens is the nanolipid enters the cell and it goes into the ribosome.
Nanolipid, for those of you who don't know, means like microfat.
Yeah, lipid means fat and nano means very, very, very small. I think it's to the -9. So it's like 0 nines before the 1 or something like that.
Like you're talking about like actual individual compound chains level of small, if you're looking at this. Like the microscope would not tiny. Be able to see the atomic level. This is what we're talking about at the atomic level.
Yeah, this is tiny. And anyway, so it gets absorbed into the cell, and it goes and gets sent into the ribosome, and the ribosome goes, oh, I'll make these proteins. And all it's doing is producing the spike protein. And what happens is after the spike protein from the COVID-19.
We need to cover one other thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, this is not the same as hijacking a cell. Your cells are doing this anyway. This is going in and doing, this is very similarly to the way that antibodies and such would be produced. Basically, this is not a virus that's invading the cell and causing the cell to explode or implode depending on the type of virus. This is, your cells would do this anyway. You're just sending a traitor RNA to be like, yo, produce this shit so that now we know how to make the antibodies. So like it basically makes these things that your body's going to recognize as a foreign body, and they will be attacked by your immune system the same as if the weakened virus had been put into your system, but with far less risk because we didn't have enough time to figure out how to weaken a virus properly with how screwed up COVID-19 is, because it can attack so many parts of the body. It was actually riskier to do it the Johnson & Johnson way than it was to do it via the messenger RNA.
Yeah. So basically what happens is that the cell produces the spike protein, and it presents it to the immune system, and the immune system goes, aha, that's it, and then produce antibodies. So what happens, a lot of people who get sick after a vaccination, it's not actually, you're not getting sick, it's actually an immune response. So the
and
difference
those
between
of us who get sicker, it's because our immune systems are kicking that much more ass, which is part of the reason why autoimmune people have a tendency to react very badly to these sorts of things, because our immune systems are already killing us all the time. So like they've got a little bit of extra to spare to go after,
yeah.
like, it means that those resources are already in full production all the time, which means that we're actually worse at fighting off real disease, but we also can attack a vaccine much harder. It's very confusing if you've got an autoimmune condition. You can probably relate to what I'm saying.
Yeah, so basically the difference between an immune response and getting sick is that it's basically the same thing, but you don't get sick, because getting sick means that you've got an active virus or infection of some description. But an immune response is basically your immune's gone, oh, okay, well, I'll attack that. It's literally the same. As far as your body's concerned, it's the same thing, but you don't get sick. You can very safely, if you're feeling like crap after a vaccine, you can still go around, walk around, and not risk spreading it to other people because you haven't got an illness. I still suggest maybe not doing that, just in case you've already had the illness that you've been immunized against, and because it's impossible to tell. But you're pretty safe to do it. I got the flu vaccine a couple of days ago, and for the rest of the day, I was feeling a bit icky for a couple of hours. But I knew that was just an immune response for me, and I was fine. But yeah, you just got to remember that you don't get sick, even though you feel like you're sick. You're not actually ill. You just got basically it's your immune system doing what it's supposed to do. But in saying that, even if you don't end up getting any reactions like feeling sick for a couple of days or whatever, it doesn't mean that it hasn't worked. It still probably has worked. It just means that you haven't had, you don't feel like crap. So you're still probably immune. And that's why the second shot kicks people's asses, because your immune system.
Because now you've got those antibodies. Your immune system knows exactly what to do, and the second shot confirms that. That's also why those of us who've already had the virus might get a way worse reaction to the first shot, because our body's like, I know what that is.
Yeah. So that's basically the difference between the two.
Which brings us actually very nicely segued into, do these shots protect you from every strain? The answer is probably, but there are a few, especially there's a strain that is currently developing in there's one in Europe and there's one in Africa, and I'm saying continents at this point because I don't remember which country, and also Nervardi again made an excellent video as to why I shouldn't say a country even if I knew one. So there are two different strains that are currently, they think the spike proteins might have changed enough, but they don't know. And we won't know until we see how bodies react to it. The thing is one of them, the spike proteins have changed in a way that makes it less effective in infecting humans, but also maybe will pass under the radar because of that. And there's one that's a lot more effective in infecting humans, and that's the European strain. We don't know if that particular strain is going to be immune to the vaccine. It's part of the reason why we're rushing the rollout of the vaccine, which does not mean it was rushed in. That does not mean it was rushed in development. It means that we are pressuring the rollout to try to beat those those sort of oncoming.
Yeah, because the more
we're observing in these strains,
the more people who get sick, the more mutations there are. That's why you haven't heard of a Australian strain or a New Zealand strain or.
I've got a video for you, and I'm about to link it, but let you finish your thought, Nervardi, because we'll get there. There's a whole video I'm about to link in the live chat for you guys to check out for that, but I'll let rant as well, because again, I helped with that. I actually got to help with that script. That was really fun. We got into a voice call to work on that one, didn't we? Because there were a few points that I was like, talk about this.
Yeah, you were the reason. Yeah.
I was the reason you were talking about HIV in that, because I was like, as an American, if you're talking to Americans and 50% of your audience is American, don't kid yourself. This is an example you need to bring up. Here's a whole social thing about that.
Yeah. So it goes for about half an hour, but it is actually probably one of my favorite videos that I've produced is the why is it racist video. But basically, basically it just it just perpetuates a negative stereotype against people. And I explain it all. I won't go into it, but definitely go and watch that video. But with that's why we haven't heard of an Australian or a New Zealand strain of COVID, but we're seeing things from like the UK and Brazil and countries that have not been able to lock down and beat this particular disease. We're going to get strains coming from it. And personally, I do not like doing the Brazilian strain or whatever strain. I don't like saying it, but it's, for some reason, the strain naming conventions are different to disease naming conventions. But yeah, the problem is that every single time a person is infected with a disease, there is that chance of there going to be a mutation that can cause problems. I mean,
and this applies to even like the more slowly mutating things like smallpox. Like, this is part of the reason why outbreaks and things are such a big concern. Even if it's just 100 people's kids, like even if you got 100 anti-vax moms that are just like, nah, we don't feel like it, like let's go to a smallpox party, there is a chance that smallpox, measles, whatever can mutate, and we might need a new vaccine. And that takes time to test and everything, as you saw with the COVID vaccine. We don't necessarily know if we could do an mRNA for a new mutation of smallpox or measles. Now, granted, these things mutate very slowly, which is part of the reason why vaccines work. But the more people go anti-vax, the higher of a chance the rest of us that are vaccinated might catch a mutation. Not because the vaccine didn't work, meh. No, it's not about that. It's about the fact that if a mutation occurs in somebody who didn't get vaccinated, which is a chance that can happen anytime anybody gets infected with literally anything, how do you think new diseases emerge? Like, how do you think new strains of diseases emerge? There is a chance that any anti-vax person who does not get this vaccine could be the person who puts everybody else at risk, which is why if you can, you should. If you can't, I'm not judging you. If you can and you don't, you should.
Metal Hawk makes a very scary point. The day that smallpox reemerges is the day that nightmares are made of. Guess what?
That shit screwed up.
Guess what? With climate change, that could happen. This COVID-19 will not be a once in 100 years situation. Pandemics are getting worse because of climate change. Our diseases are getting worse because of climate change. We are going to be seeing a lot of things. Tuberculosis is getting worse because of climate change.
Not in the least of it because we're being exposed to new and exciting strains as things like deforestation are becoming a thing, but also because we're packing closer together. So whoever's got that novel new measles virus, you better hope their kids, like if that shiny new virus gets into a kid, you better hope that kid's vaccinated, because if not, then you're screwed.
Leoltus Faulkner, I'm sorry if I pronounced your name incorrectly, says, I know this may be a little bit off topic, but since ice is melting, do you think ancient viruses could become released? Yes, absolutely. That's one of the things that we don't know.
Wasn't there a mine that opened up that hadn't been open since the 1940s that had yellow fever and somebody got infected? Like, viruses are not, unless they decay somehow, viruses are not alive, so they don't die.
Yeah. Anthrax is another one that can live in the soil for like 20, 30, 50 years and can come back. They found smallpox RNA in waterways. It's just fragments of it, so it's not infectious. But people who in Siberia that died of smallpox and got buried, as the permafrost starts to thaw, then we're going to start seeing things like diseases that our society has never seen before. Like tens of thousands, hundreds of thousand-year-old diseases, as well as like things like molds and stuff. They can last thousands of years in permafrost. As climate change gets worse, we are going to see more of this. Our food supply may end up being destroyed because of climate change, because of diseases that we haven't seen before for tens of thousands of years are going to be released because of climate change melting the permafrost. Guys, this is really serious. If you're not scared of climate change now, we're going to be seeing COVID-19 every couple of decades, not every 100 years. Okay, this is not going to be our last. If you're my age, we should expect another pandemic like this again. This is scary shit. This is really scary shit. We need to clean up our act. It's not just, oh, let's protect the environment. Yeah, we should definitely protect the environment, but we should protect ourselves. One of the weird things is the tilt of the Earth's rotation has changed because of the melting poles. We're going to be seeing a lot more weird ass things. This is scary.
If you needed a reason to be concerned about climate change, there you go. Akeda goes, you two are going to scare me back into becoming a theist.
Sorry.
Yeah. No, this is not an okay time to talk about Bitcoin. We will talk about that stuff later, but we need to stay semi on topic. We're about an hour and a half in.
But yeah, Bitcoin is environmental terrorism.
Okay, here we go. It is not the Wuhan flu. All right, so we had a question earlier. Why shouldn't you call it the Wuhan flu or name a disease after a place? You did a whole 30-minute video on this, and I'm about to post it. For those of you who are not subscribed to Nervardia, and I know that at least half of you are not because she only has a little under 3K subscribers, and I've got 5K, so some of y'all motherfuckers are slacking. Here's a link to one of her videos. Please go click that button and subscribe. Hit the notification bell. I have a hand in most of her scripts. I help her edit them. Like, this is public knowledge. This is not something that, like, I'm credit claiming for. Like, this is something that we talk for hours about. We talk literally every day. This is one of my best friends in the community. Like, I recommend her channel as strongly as I recommend Ocean and Wolf and Jen. Like, this is a human who is very near and dear to my heart. Please check out her work. She is one of my favorite science communicators. She talks about a wide variety of topics, including a bunch that you don't see other creators making on. These are, like, she does fantastic work, and I'm incredibly grateful that I know her. So please go subscribe to her channel if you're not already subscribed. Her work is worth it.
So the reason why associating it with a particular group of people is racist is, well, okay, this is what I mentioned in the video, is if you talk about a person from China, who are you going to be thinking of? You're going to be thinking about a person who is short-statured, black, long, straight hair, or black, straight hair, the Asian eyes. But that person from China could have been a kid from two expats, and so they could look exactly like me. You cannot disassociate a person. You cannot say a person is from a particular place without thinking of the stereotypical vision of a person from that particular place.
Even though you can technically be Chinese and look like Mrna did if you were born there and grew up there. Like, that's a culture, not an ethnicity. Like, that's a culture, not a race. Race is not real. Race is not real. Ethnicity is. There are genetic clusters. That is real. Race is not real. Yeah.
So when you associate a disease with a particular area of the world, you're scapegoating that group of people. So, for example, if you've got, like, as I said, like, you can have a person who was born and raised in England and is 100% English, but have Japanese parents. They're still English, but they've got Japanese heritage. And if you say that a disease is from a particular place, you're basically going that the people who live there are the spreaders of this particular disease. By making a disease out to be a particular area of the world, it gives people a reason to hate on people. One of the biggest increases of violence against a particular group of people are Asian people, because they
internationally, not just in the US,
internationally, there's been problems in England, there've been problems here in Australia, there's been problems in the US, all over the world. hate crimes against Asian people have peaked because
and
of
hate crimes
COVID-19.
against Chinese people specifically have peaked in places like Korea and Japan as well. So there's an ethnic component as well to naming after a particular group of people. But here in the US, we should fucking know better, because what happened with the Reagan administration and the AIDS pandemic, the HIV/AIDS pandemic. So HIV is the virus that causes AIDS. AIDS is the condition. HIV is the virus, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which HIV is more treatable now than it was ever. But why did that happen? Because millions of people died. Because we associated HIV/AIDS with gay people. And the Reagan administration decided that was a punishment from God.
Years to say anything. The first person to be diagnosed in America was in 1981. It was 1985 before Reagan even mentioned HIV publicly. The CDC during that time,
and it was a full-blown pandemic at this point.
They were screaming for some money, and it was given to them along with some other little bits and pieces, and then got their funding cut. So, oh yeah, we'll give you money, and we're going to now cut your funding. It was like,
well, it wasn't a sort of genocide. It was a genocide. It was an LGBT genocide.
It was a genocide, and not just that. It was also a genocide of people who required blood transfusions. The Ryan White was the Ryan White Act, because he was a kid who got HIV from a blood transfusion, and he was chased out of school. He was bullied, and he ended up dying, I think, 4 years after his expected life. And the Ryan White Act is because of a kid being bullied because he had hemophilia and he needed a blood transfusion. The Anime Cat says, ever wonder why we don't have many gay men for that period? And that's why. Yeah, it's true.
Well, it was also like there were also, and these were the names of them. I dislike this name, but there were anti-sodomy laws as well. There were actual laws against being gay back then.
Mm-hmm.
It was illegal to be publicly gay. Those laws, several of them did not get canceled until far later. There was a lot of gay rights movement, like those of us who grew up in the 90s in the US, which, like, Mero, I remember you kind of knew tangentially a little bit, but like when you started digging into this, you were like, holy shit, you're right, I do need to talk about this, because the association between gay men, which largely was a population and transmission problem, if we had done more research, we would have realized, well, yeah, heterosexual people can absolutely catch it too. It's just that you're more likely to get it from certain kinds of intercourse because you're more likely to be exposed to bodily fluids in like permeable membranes from those particular kinds of intercourse. But like general heterosexual, like cis penis and vagina penetration can still absolutely transfer it. It can, like, quote unquote straight people, even the super straight people, like, even, you know, as if that were somehow something real, like, and not just bigotry, like, even like straight people 100% that do not have any of that kind of stuff, even like if you've never had anal in your entire life, you can still get it. And you can get it from shared needles and stuff. And it was a genocide. It was anti-gay and anti, like, you know, addict. And it was fucking horrible. But because it was related so much to gay people, they ignored it. Same with the so-called Spanish flu.
Yeah. Anime Cat, yes, that is why gay men can't donate blood if they've been sexually active for 6 months before.
Absolutely, David. Like, abso-fucking-lutely.
Yeah. And yeah, you're right. The Spanish flu actually caused a whole heap of bigotry against Spanish people. And the Spanish flu didn't even start in Spain. So
it likely started in the States.
It's likely started in the States. And that's why you should now stop saying the Spanish flu, but the 1918 flu pandemic. And there's like the Black Plague, the Black Death, was associated with elderly women, and elderly women were killed
It also
back
got
then.
foisted onto anti-Semitism. It also got foisted onto Jewish people later.
Mm-hmm.
It started with elderly women, and then it got foisted onto Jewish people, and massive anti-Semitic exterminations happened. Like prior to the Holocaust, people still wanted to kill Jewish people. That's a thing that's been going on through most of history.
The Pope actually said, "Guys, stop killing Jewish people." Like the Pope himself was going, "Guys, just stop it, just stop it." But
yeah, because people thought people would call it that, and people would assume that you were more likely to get it if you were that thing, which is another reason why you don't want to use these names.
Exactly, and there was just. Yeah, that's why you should never associate a disease with anyone. Or anything, even like, for example, Asperger's, the guy Asperger, he sent kids off to euthanasia camps. The guy Asperger, which is why we no longer call it Asperger's. Another example is swine flu. The swine flu, even though it was spread amongst humans to humans, it was
people mass exterminated pigs.
They mass and for example, in Egypt, they killed like 300,000 pigs, and Egypt is full of Islamic people, but the Coptic Christians used their pigs as lifeblood.
666 says Asperger was a Nazi.
Yes, he was definitely a Nazi. And so the Coptic Christians had their livelihood destroyed because of the swine flu. So the swine flu was actually the reason why the World Health Organization convened and talked about new naming conventions. So that's now why we no longer will have diseases called named after a person, named after a particular occupation. Like miner's lung is now known as black lung, I think, and because people live around
that if you're not, people assume that you can either catch it from those people or that you can only catch it if you are one of those people. Yeah. It's dangerous.
It is dangerous because people who just live near coal mines or have a coal miner as a
yes, both the 1918 flu pandemic and swine flu are H1N1. Yes.
Yeah. And so people people who can get miner's lung for laundering coal miners' clothing. Tennis elbow is now known as RSI because it's repetitive strain injury, because I knew somebody who had tennis elbow from drawing. There's another, people, places, occupations, and animals are the ones that you don't tend to do because it just spreads misinformation. So, and also you can't actually name a disease after the way you can shorten, like the acronym spells something, as I mentioned in my my video. You can't name it coronavirus necrophysing testiolitis or CVNT. You can't name a disease that because you don't.
So I just posted your video again. If you haven't subscribed to Nervardia, please do. She's got another video on the topic that we're talking about today that's going to go deeper into the development timeline of the mRNA vaccines and how it's not nearly as short as you think it was. In fact, she's also going to be talking about, she's going to do something really cool in terms of framing that I'm excited about, but I'm not going to spoil it if she doesn't want to. I just going to say working on that script was incredibly fun. And I know that she's been working on editing the video, so I know it's going to come out really soon, which is part of why she's here. But please don't subscribe to her.
Old.
Yes, you're going to feel fucking old by the time you're done watching that video, especially if you happen to be 30 or older. So you're just going to be like, damn, I remember that. I remember that too. So we're at the hour and a half mark where we usually start winding down for shill. Is there anything about the Johnson & Johnson vaccine or the Pfizer one? Again, the RNA vaccines, as far as we know, the mRNA vaccines do not seem to, at present, pose a risk to pregnant people. Somebody brought that up earlier. That does not seem to be the case. And the Johnson & Johnson vaccine only might be potentially threatening for a very specific subset of people. And we don't even really know why yet. For why people with this specific low platelet condition seem to be at risk for these deep vein blood clots. but it's very specifically a certain demographic that might be at risk for it, and you have to already have that condition. So the chances of you being that person are pretty damn low. So get the damn vaccine. Even if the only one near you is Johnson & Johnson, there's a very good chance that unless you have that specific condition, if you can get it, you should anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Didn't you say within the cohorts of everybody getting the people who were going to get it, so that specific subset, you said it was only like 100-200 people are likely to get that anyway?
Yeah, there's been quite a few people who they knew had it who did not get those blood clots. So even then, even within that very narrow, tiny subset, like you are, because we don't know, again, how this affects trans women. The only people that have been reporting are AFAB cis women. Even if you are an AFAB cis woman who has this particular subset, this particular disease, we still don't know it's going to hit you because only 1 in 200 of those specific people who are already an infinitesimally small subset have even had this. And of that, only 2 had serious complications.
That's in the US.
Yeah, that's all the data that that's all the data that we currently have on that vaccine.
From the US or worldwide?
From the U.S., I don't know if the Johnson & Johnson vaccine has been distributed worldwide, but I've only seen data from the U.S. being discussed in the news, so I can only talk about the data that we're getting from the U.S.
Yeah. So with Australia, that's like we've got about 25 million people in Australia. That means a maximum of about 27 people are going to die from this, which is an absolute tragedy. Don't say that I'm taking that away. It is an absolute tragedy if anyone dies from any vaccine. However, I think Australia's had like 1,000 deaths from COVID-19, just to put it into perspective.
Yeah, 1 person has died from the vaccine that we know of, like from the Johnson & Johnson vaccines, from this complication. Over 100,000 people have died from COVID. I was nearly one of them. Yeah, I was saying over 100,000. Like, I don't know what the current statistic is, but over 100,000 people in the U.S. alone have died. I know one of the first people. I nearly was one. My husband nearly was one. It is not like being scared of a complication from a vaccine. Do you want to take your chances with permanent damage at the minimum or potential death at the maximum? Because again, remember, a good percentage of those people did not have any complicated conditions. Like there's no, just because you think you're healthy does not necessarily mean that you're not going to die if you get it. Like, would you rather get vaccinated and have a good chance that you're not going to catch this motherfucker, or would you rather risk your own death because you want to be stubborn? Yeah.
I would take the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. I don't think I'm in the cohort. I don't think I have a platelet problem, but even if I did, I probably would still risk it. I would still risk it. That's what I would do. And
so, let's talk about the shill portion of the video. So, Nervardia, what do you got coming up?
I have basically a bit of a timeline of the mRNA vaccines, as well as talking about the reason why it seems rushed, but it actually isn't. So if anyone can send, I know you've sent me some clips, but if anyone else can send me some clips of people saying the COVID vaccine is rushed. So I've got a good variety of people. So just make sure you've got someone saying, is the COVID vaccine
Go look
rushed?
up your favorite conspiracy theorist saying that. Send it to Nervardia. I know that stuff's getting suppressed on YouTube, as it rightly should be. But 100%, that is a good thing. Some ideas are not worth being put on the marketplace. I'm sorry to say. Again, there is no tolerance paradox. There is only the community that you want to promote and whether or not you want people to die. Just saying.
Yeah. So if you could send it through to me on Twitter, my Twitter is @Nervardia. It's spelled like my channel name. My DMs are open. So just flick me a DM. If you can think of any, I would appreciate that. And please include timestamps as well, because if it's a 25-minute long video, I probably won't be able to watch it. Unfortunately, I am a one-woman show at the moment. So that's coming out hopefully this weekend or maybe next week. I don't know. I'm also experimenting with a new background as well. So you'll get to see my first ever video with this new background. So
that's exciting. So, for those of you who are not patrons, I don't know if you all follow me on Twitter. If you do, I'm sorry. If you don't, please, like, that's probably not the best idea. Like, please check it out at least once. But if you follow me, again, I'm sorry. There's a lot of insanity that goes on. There's a lot of whinging that happens on my Twitter. Like, I would not recommend it to anybody, but people are probably going to click on it anyway. There's a link to it in the description below of the video. But I was gonna do a video on how Yahweh is a trickster deity, specifically the Yahweh as presented in the Bible as opposed to the Tanakh. There is a difference between the two, because when you add the New Testament, it becomes irrefutable. But then one of my lovely creator friends decided to draw my attention to the most racist take I have seen in the pagan community outside of outright folkists yet. Somebody, Freya Norling, decided to claim that culture is not real, the cultural appropriation is not real, and basically told minorities to sit down and shut up. So I was like, you want to have a conversation about cultural appropriation? Put up your fist, let's go. And so I did some research into her and found out it was even worse. Like, I was going to take it as maybe you're ignorant, and then I found posts showing me she very much shouldn't have been. And therefore, with the claims she was making, yeah, I'll let y'all get to see the video. You're going to see a darker side of me than you have before. This video is a lot more venomous than you're used to in response videos from me. Mero has seen it. This video is a lot harsher than most of the videos that you've seen from me. I had my racial trauma triggered pretty badly when I saw the video that was sent to me from Freya Norling. And for once, I'm actually not going to be putting a link to it in the description, unlike what I normally would do, because I don't think it deserves the views. You can Google it if you really want to. But cacti are featured prominently. Patrons know what that is all about. So, yeah. If y'all want to see me get angry, I don't like getting into the mud. I absolutely hate drama. But when you have somebody with almost 30K subscribers putting out a take that's basically like, minorities, sit down, shut up, take it. It's no such thing as cultural appropriation. It's bullshit. And also, you're the real racists for saying that you have these experiences and that it hurts you, which I actually show her saying in the video. She calls us racists and segregationists as Native peoples for saying, hey, learn from us, please, if you're going to, like, try to practice this. Fuck no. Like, y'all are getting a second pissed off polytheist in a row. And I regret nothing that I said in it. I worked my ass off on that video. I don't know what a spoon is anymore. I'm surrounded by sporks that somebody decided to chain to a battery in some kind of sequence, and I'm a little bit terrified of what the result of that might be. I hope that for those of you who don't understand cultural appropriation, getting a little bit more of an emotional take, if you guys didn't get to see my first video on the topic, that it might help you understand it a little more. I know that some of my patrons certainly felt that way. But this is something where I felt like I had, as an Indigenous person, I felt like I had to speak up, because that's genuinely harmful rhetoric that she was putting out. So that's what's coming out tomorrow night. It's coming out the usual time, 9 EST, 6 PST. Be there, please, because this is one of the most important videos I've put out. It's at a high risk of demonetization because of the fact that I do get as nasty as I do in it. I do swear repeatedly. I try my best not to attack her as an individual human being, but I do go after her ideas with the vengeance of 1,000 suns. There's a track that I used for customization for the music called called The Dance of the War Drums. That should give you an idea of how angry I was in this piece. And like, it's been hard to work on. It really has. But I'm one of those people who will set myself on fire to keep the community warm. So please try to spread that video far and wide if you find it useful. Please show up tomorrow for the premiere so that there's a good chance that, like, somebody might see it in the algorithm. My sincere hope is that it'll reach Freya and that she'll change her mind. I don't have a lot of hope for that, given the fact that she has had Indigenous people telling her to cut her shit out, and she's basically told them to fuck off. But my hope is maybe if it's said in a different way that she might hear us, or at the very least that the Sami people, the people that she's hurting, that like some education might help them, because most people haven't heard of the tribe that she's taking advantage of. Most of the people haven't like learned all that much about the practices she's grifting on. And I linked a bunch of Sami creators and a charity for their liberation in the description of that video as well. So please, if nothing else, show up as an ally. Even if this isn't a thing for your community, even if you're not a heathen, even if you're, you know, like even if you just consider yourself like an atheist or a monotheist ally, please show up for this one. It is one of the most important videos I've ever done for this channel. Genuinely. So, with that, do you have anything more to say, Mrna?
I have Patreon as well, if you want to join that.
Yeah,
actually, right now it's probably the best time, because for the past couple of months I've been like, I'm not going to charge you. I've been a bit slack on YouTube. So you can join me and get all of the patron benefits of getting a post every once in a while. You can join. You won't get charged.
Oh, Aether Tales says we're stronger together.
We are stronger together.
All right.
Should I get out Thyla? She's a bit sleepy. She kind of is a bit like.
Yeah, she should probably just be. We can leave her be sleepy.
Yeah, okay. All right.
All right, guys. So I say this at the end of every show. We built the coalition. Now let's fight. We're stronger together.